All right, it's time. The NFL Presidential Address, Week 8. Ralph Michaels, LCal Sports LV with us. And Matt Joseph at Mid-Major. Matt, you can find Matt at Sports Memo, Ralph and I at Wager Talking. We are privileged to continue to do this show. Have you guys join us in the chat room and just talk football, man. Matt, I'll start with you. How did Week 7 go for you?
Week 7 was good. As always with the prop market, there are some good calls and some bad calls, but some nice breaks in that Bears game. That last drive that Nick Foles had was very good with some of the garbage dump-offs that he had. So it was a good weekend. And I also, like Ralph, I also have a blank piece of paper to tell you when we need to go within an hour. So I wanted to be like Ralph.
Oh, okay. Well, now you're like Ralph. Did you bring a pen?
Yeah, it's over there. It's off camera.
Okay. Ralph Michaels. How did you do, bro? How was Week 7?
Not bad. 3-1-1. Some people may have won 3-2. So, the NFL clicking away, and really, I think you mentioned this, Prez. Once we start getting some of these matchups and looking at stats and all the numbers I run, this is really where in college and NFL my numbers start to increase with the matchups and the histories and the last 4-week type data that I look at.
I had a winning week. Capped it off winning my 5% play on the under in the Rams game. I had a little sweat. Sunday, I completely lost my shit. Ended up 3-3. Lost with Atlanta. Almost killed myself. I was so mad at the referees for allowing Detroit that extra play. And then I had Cleveland. Was even madder at the idiot kicker who couldn't get us an extra point. But that was yesterday's news. Let's go, Ralph. T&A for Week 8. Talk to me.
Well, we mentioned this on Wager Talk today, and there's some strong numbers, so I do want to mention them here. Teams before a bye. Teams after a bye, I just tweeted out, you guys would be surprised, maybe not. Home teams after a bye, the last 10 years are only 46% ATS. The last 5 years, they're only 47% ATS. How many times do you hear, a team's coming in rested off a bye, they're a great play? Well, they're not. But teams before a bye, there are some legitimate spots. Do teams give 100% effort knowing they're going to have off the week? I'm not sure if that's the scenario, but home favorites with a bye on deck, like Philadelphia and Cleveland this week, have gone 62% since 2015. Home dogs with a bye on deck, like Cincinnati, have gone 18-11 against the spread, 62.1%. And if they're a small home dog up to 4, they're 82% going 14-3. Away dogs with a bye on deck, doesn't apply to anyone, but they are 56.4%. Doesn't apply to anyone this week. Obviously, it'll apply to others. The only negative situation going back to 2015 are away favorites with a bye on deck. The Rams playing on a short week, traveling to the East Coast. Those teams away favorites with a bye on deck have gone 11-12, 48%. I got a couple questions on Twitter, so I want to mention it. Largest lines in the NFL, there have been 19 times a line has been 18 or higher, like Kansas City and the Jets. Those teams have gone 19-0 straight up, but only 7-12 against the spread, 37%. Biggest NFL line, 2013, Denver was minus 26 to Jacksonville. And in 93 and 2007, San Fran and New England were minus 23.5 to Cincinnati and Philly. Last one I'll mention is one, guys, I've mentioned this numerous weeks. It continues to win. It's at a 70.5% clip the last 4 years. It's at a 67% mark this year, and it's this simple. You play a road team that was off a home game, and their opponent allowed over 400 or more yards. So Atlanta, Las Vegas, the Jets, Miami, and Houston were all at home last week. They're all on the road this week, and their opponents allowed over 400 yards. 79 ATS wins, 33 ATS losses, 70.5% for that easy NFL system. I don't care if you play the system, but I'll tell you what, if you have a 70% ATS mark, you should be going through those games and either putting a positive check mark if you like it or a negative mark if you don't like it, just so you have that thought in your process when you're making your handicapping decisions.
Well, I mean, such a great point you just made, because ultimately, guys, I mean, Ralph is not suggesting you just go blindly bet these trends, but, if you are wishy-washy, for instance, on a particular play, take those trends into account and let them help guide you in making your decision. And, Ralph, the stuff about playing before the bye is so interesting because obviously even with the away favorites at only 48%, ultimately if you add them all up into a bowl of soup and bet them all blind for the last 10, 15 years, that 48%, yeah, you'll have lost some of those, but you'll have gained so much on the other side.
And it's the smallest. It's only 23 plays, so it's the smallest margin. Just blindly playing every team before a bye, you're going to be about 58.7%. Just blindly playing every NFL team before that offense.
Guys, tell me where you can find information like that online. Show me where you can find information like that on ESPN or Fox Sports or CBS Sportsline or your local weather channel that gives the sports news. That's how good Ralph Michaels is and how important.
Prez, I got one more thing to say while you just said that weather online. I just want to mention this now so everyone's paying attention. We are talking 20-plus mile-an-hour winds for the entire Midwest. So Green Bay, Chicago, Cleveland, all of those cities, make sure before you are betting totals or you're looking, when you get a little closer to the weekend, make sure you check that weather. That way we're not mentioning that in every game where they have it. Be aware, they're out there. The forecasts are for very, very strong winds in that entire bowl area.
Man, what a privilege it is to host this show. Guys, our consensus bets last week, we took Philadelphia under at 1. We took the Jets under at 1, and we took the Chargers first half. It lost. We went 2-1. Our record to date is 9-9, but we are 6-3 in the last 3 shows. So stay with us all the way to the end. We'll give out our consensus picks again at the end of the show. Let's get to it, boys. Let's go straight into the Thursday night football game. One that I'm sure the NFL Network's excited to show. Atlanta plus 2.5. We already heard on Wager Talk today. The link is offering a 3 against Carolina. Total's been up and down, up and down, up and down. Right now it's sitting at 51. I think there were 49s on the board at some point. Matt, I'm passing on this game. I lean towards the under. I know that's sort of counterintuitive, if you will. But I feel like, if Carolina is going to win this game, and the odds makers think they are, I think they're going to slow it down. And we saw with Atlanta over the last, 2 years, they can look like world beaters on any given drive, and then the next 3 drives, it's 3 and out. I lean on the under, but I am going to outright pass on this game. Where are you going?
Well, don't forget, this was a game that was played a couple weeks ago, and the Panthers won 23-16 on the road. So that's some sort of, and I'm not going to bring up the R word because I know Ralph says it's overused, so we'll move on from that. Plus, and Ralph mentioned the weather, you've got remnants of the tropical storm that's heading through the country tomorrow, and there's a 50% chance of rain. There's some wind that could be in the forecast for tomorrow, so that's something to pay attention to. And at least from the prop side of this thing, I mean, the big question is Christian McCaffrey going to play? And he practiced, and they're talking him up. And it'll be interesting to see, especially if the weather is wet and windy, if they actually risk it and decide to put him out there, or if they decide to wait another week. Either way, I think there's some value potentially with Mike Davis. We've talked about it week after week after week. Last week, DeAndre Swift got the over on his receptions. I think that Mike Davis is going to be worth a look here when it comes to his receptions. He's going to be a guy who's going to be rather busy. We know the Falcons have given up the most yards to running backs out of the backfield when it comes to receptions. The other stat here is Julio Jones Jones, in 8 Thursday night outings, has caught 66% of his targets for an average of 114 yards per game. We know he's had some huge games against Carolina in the past. Julio was a full go today in practice. So Julio Jones and Mike Davis are the two guys I'm focusing on here in props, especially Mike Davis's receptions. But the weather's going to be a factor here, and I think that it's going to be some sort of an issue. I like your under here as a lean, but we'll see what happens if the rain and the wind come into play here.
Mr. Michaels?
Well, again, you look at this Atlanta team. They might be 1-6, but 4 losses by a touchdown or less. 3 losses. They led into the fourth quarter this year, and Gurley takes that knee. What happens at the 1 if he doesn't go into the end zone? They win this game, and perhaps things are starting to turn around. But with that said, you're now hearing rumblings in Atlanta that people may be on the block. And, when you're to this stage and you have an interim head coach, who really didn't want the job either, you're just a team I can't bet on. But, there's one angle that I didn't give out in trends and angles that I wanted to save for this game, because it is so important to note. I mean, Morris is an interim, but he's been a head coach before, so he's been there and done that. When you have a first-year head coach like Matt Rule, and they play on a Sunday and then they play a short game on Thursday, during the first 9 weeks of the season when the coaches are still getting established, first-year head coaches on Thursday, 4 wins, 19 ATS losses, and 1 push, 17.4% against the spread. That's enough to keep me off the Carolina side, even though I would lean that way, because remember, Rule was in college. He was at Baylor last year. So you're going from learning the NFL system, getting everything down in a week's time, to now for the first time in your career, getting it ready in the NFL from a Sunday to a Thursday. That's enough to keep me off.
I'll say this, though, real quick, that when Rule was at Temple in the AAC, they played Thursday night games. So he has done it before. Now, it's been a couple of years because obviously he was at Baylor in between, but he has done it before, and obviously he's kind of surpassed a lot of our expectations so far. But I do agree with what you're talking about there.
Awesome stuff, guys. Ralph, I want to talk to you about something, and I want to talk really to the listeners. Carolina is -2.5, and if you take them on the money line, they are -140. How do you know whether the -140 is the right bet versus the -2.5? Now, Ralph and I spoke last night, and Ralph is going to put together a chart over the next few weeks, and that chart will tell us how many games land on 1, on 2, on 3, on 4, etc. We also are going to look at stuff like how many -2.5s land on 2 and 1, etc. And what I mean by that is you are paying 30% extra to take a -2.5 down to the money line. We need to know if that is the right or wrong bet. Right now, my gut, Ralph, is that 30% is too high a number. Interestingly, if you looked at Atlanta at -2 this past week against Detroit, they were -125. That was a 15% difference, and that would likely be worth taking the money line bet. But looking at this -140, I don't see value on the money line, Ralph. You know what I'm trying to...
Well, Prez, I can just tell you, I ran while you were talking. Since the 2015 season, and I go back to the 2015 season because the numbers all changed, because that's the year the extra point line got moved back. So when you're talking about a 1 or 2 point favorite, I think the only numbers to look at are since 2015 because it's the modern era. Straight up favorites of 1, 1.5, 2, or 2.5 have covered 46% and have only won straight up 51.1%. So you don't have a big enough difference in there. If you only win straight up 51.1% of the time, there's no way you want to lay $140 in that situation.
Brilliant. And that's why you guys tune in to the NFL Presidential Address, and, well, that's why I beg Ralph for his time. So really, Ralph, do you lean on the under in this game? Matt and I lean on the under. It's really the only bets we can find. We're not going to make it, but that's sort of what we're looking at. Yeah, no?
only if the weather's involved. So I think there's better situations that I don't want to go on and say this is a consensus play because it wasn't in my thought process at all.
You got it, brother. Guys, let's talk Detroit, Indianapolis, and I think Detroit are going to come into this game feeling really good about themselves. Look, they were gifted a win, but in the same regard, they still had to march down the field in 60 seconds with no timeouts. They still had to make really great plays. Their defense stepped up when they needed to. Their offense stepped up when they needed to as well, albeit not an impressive offensive display. Indianapolis, I don't buy this team at all. They are a sell team for me so long as Phillip Rivers is the quarterback. I like Detroit, Matt. I like Detroit a lot here. I'm getting points. I'm getting points at home. I'm getting points against a team whose quarterback is prone to throw interceptions and can't stretch the field. I'm getting a team that came off an emotionally uplifting win. And I also like the under. 50 points when Indianapolis is involved seems like a crazy total to me. One of those plays will be released to my clients. I haven't figured out which one yet, but I am personally betting both Detroit and the under.
I can see the under. I can see the under more than the Lions. To me, the Lions are one of those teams, much like the Browns and the Raiders and several other teams. It's like, okay, you've done something nice, but can you build off of it? And so when I look at the Colts here, the Colts have yet to give up a touchdown to a tight end this year. They've allowed the second fewest receptions to the position. We've talked about the Falcons. The Colts have allowed towards the bottom when it comes to receptions from the running backs and, yardage-wise too. So where's the offense coming from for Detroit? And you've got a Colts team that's going to be relatively fresh. Now, I will say this. I need to see what Darius Leonard's status is. He's got the groin injury. He's one of the best linebackers in football. If he's in there, then the Lions will have even more trouble. If he's not in there, then that'll make things a little different. But you have to think, if you're with your Lions bet, you have to like the fact that the Lions bought at the trade deadline so far. They traded for Everson Griffin. This is a team that traditionally at the trade deadline is selling pieces or doing nothing and watching everyone around them improve. Now, I don't know how much Everson Griffin's going to improve, but you have to be buoyed by the fact that your front office has already made a trade to help your team. So you've got to think that there's some good feelings for the Lions. I'm not ready to get there with them as a home underdog in a game that they should win because Detroit in this situation probably plenty of times has lost. But I definitely think that under's in play here because I think the Colts defense could hold down the Lions a little bit here.
I love it. Ralph?
Well, I look at Stafford and what he did against Atlanta, 25 of 36, 340 yards. But let's remember, Atlanta is the number 31 pass D and Indy is number 2. So with that said, Matt, I love your point about being a buyer. I mean, this will be the first year the Browns are a buyer as well. And for all those years, I mean, they have to find a wide receiver somewhere. But, the Browns have never been a buyer since, they've been the Browns again. So that does set a standard. We talk about it in baseball all the time before the trade deadline. You make that big trade. We don't hear as many trades in the NFL, but throughout the locker room, I think that has to bolster. We look at Indy. And the stat profile is still good. I mean, I understand what you say, Prez. They lost at Cleveland. They lost at Jacksonville. But their stat profile on the new NFL stat sheet that I did that's up on my page at Wager Talk, they are number 2 in the NFL at plus 75 yards per game diff. And I talk about diff all the time, guys, because let me just use Seattle as an example. Seattle's number 1 offense. They're number 32 defense. So are they even in yards? No, because that 32 should be closer to 40. Seattle is minus 54 yards per game, so they're 29th in the NFL. So India's number 2 in yards per game, and the most important category for me in the NFL is yards per play, and they are still number 2 in the NFL at plus 103 yards per play. One more stat I ran up, and I don't mean to keep running to these guys, but if I had this question, I'm sure some other people would. I wanted to know in the NFL, if you won your last 2 games to get to 500, is that a pushover point where perhaps it's giving you, like Miami and Detroit are? They each won their last 2 games. They're each at 500 now for the season. But going back to 1989, those teams are 12, 15, and 3 ATS, so nothing really pending there. Detroit again, 8-0-1 over under at home. I think they will be able to move on Indy's defense. I'm going to disagree with Matt a little bit. It's not going to be a play for me. But if I had a lean in this game, I would lean Detroit, and I actually do lean to the over as well.
There you go. Detroit, Indianapolis in the book. Let's welcome our guys into the chat room. 370 of you guys watching. Can't thank you enough. Dr. G Vegas, I hope you're doing well. Joseph Gomez, we love having you with us, even though we're having a spirited argument while taping the show. Ignoring Ralph. Ben, nice to see you. Gary, ignoring Matt. Teasing the NFL. Jimmy Stain, Craig Spack, Trance. We love you all, guys. We're appreciate you being with us. Ralph, Green Bay, -6.5. A few sevens on the board. I'll go to you first. They're playing Minnesota, 52.5. And, man, I bet Minnesota against Atlanta and pooched that one. But, man, I want to bet Green Bay. I want to bet them bad. I think they're a lot better team. But I can't play a line that big in a division situation where these games are usually pretty close. My lean is on Green Bay. My lean is on the over. But, Ralph, I am passing on this game.
Well, this is one of those weather games. So, I'm never going to go over in that type of weather situation. Minnesota's got a weird statistical profile. They're number 27th in yards per game diff, -40 per game. They're -6.2 points per game, but they're almost equal with Green Bay in yards per play diff. They're number 15 and number 12, the two teams are. Zimmer off a loss has that mystique, which, now hasn't come to fruition. I mean, he's 1-5 this year. So that's like, the New England Belichick off a loss. Now that Brady's gone, now that they're a different team, can you keep quoting those numbers? And even I'm not quoting those numbers with Minnesota because they're a different team. The thing with Minnesota is you live and die with Cousins. Cousins threw multiple picks last week in the 40-23 loss against Atlanta 2 weeks ago, their last game. When Cousins throws 2 or more picks, he's 0-20 straight up. They don't have a chance. Minnesota's not that explosive offense that if they have a negative turnover margin, they have enough offense to score. So, with that being said, can the Packers get a few picks? I don't know. If someone has to count on their running game, with windy conditions, do I lean with Minnesota more or Green Bay more? I actually lean with Minnesota more because offensively and defensively, their numbers in the rush game are superior. They're 5.0 yards per carry on offense versus 4.7 for Green Bay. They're 4.1 on defense versus 4.6. So, this is one of those game day situations where if I know the wind is a factor and I'm taking that Rodgers advantage over Cousins out of it, it might have me leaning Minnesota. So it's a game I don't have an opinion on based on what the weather's going to be.
Matt?
I mean, this is the perfect game, it seems like, to tease either way. I mean, obviously, if you take the Packers and you tease it down, you essentially need them to win. And if you tease the Vikings, you get a lot more room there. So it's whatever. The question is, so Dalvin Cook, as we talked about in the chat, it looks like Dalvin Cook's going to play. That makes a huge difference. They're starting to get healthier in the offensive line. The problem is their secondary is still ravaged by injuries. They traded Yannick Ngakoue away, so there's a seller's mentality, at least, to this team. On the Green Bay side, they played this game back in week 1, 43-34, and Devontae Adams had 14 receptions in that game. He had a ton of receptions last week. But once again, as Ralph talked about with the wind, I'm looking more at the slot guys, the guys who are going to go shorter amounts of yardage. I got to do a little more research on Robert Tonyan to see how Minnesota does against the tight ends. Also, it looks like Aaron Jones is going to be out for this game once again. They haven't officially said it, but they said they're taking it easy with him. So to me, Jamal Williams, who dominated the carries and dominated the receptions last week, he's going to be one of those guys that you're going to want to look at for the rushing and receiving combined totals, because if there's a lot of wind and you can run on the Vikings and you can throw some passes to the running back, Jamal Williams should be rather busy in this game.
He's Matt Joseph. You can find him at sportsmemo.com. Ralph Michaels with us, of course. You can find him at wagertalk.com. And every single Monday to Friday, Ralph Michaels joins Teddy and myself on a Wager Talk Today. It's an incredible show, guys. Check it out. Matt Joseph will be on Friday's show giving out some prop bets, so be with us Friday, noon Eastern, same channel, Wager Talk TV, our YouTube channel. Guys, Buffalo, my God, can you imagine? This team must be so bloody excited. Talk about getting a monkey off the back. They can do this Sunday. This has to be a circled game. I think Miami, Buffalo, even the lowly Jets have to be like, oh my God, Brady's gone. There's a chance. Here they are, -3.5. Total of 42. Ralph, Matt, I'll go to you first. Buffalo has been out of sorts since that Tuesday night game 3 weeks ago. You know, if they played the New York Jets, they couldn't get into the end zone. It was 6 field goals. They didn't cover. Their offense is not clicking at all. I love Buffalo here. I think they get their act together on Sunday. I think this is a circled game. I think they want to lay the smackdown on this team and on the Pats. And regardless of all the shit that Cam Newton says, oh, I'll be better. I got to get better. This game's on me. It's my fault. I got to step up. He hasn't done a damn thing in 2 years. This guy's not a great quarterback anymore. His accuracy is abysmal. If you go through that New England offense, you couldn't name me, put the offensive line aside, you couldn't name me 3 guys that could start on any team in the league. New England is a shell of themselves. Buffalo, Buffalo, Buffalo. Talk me out of it.
I mean, did you watch the Jets game? I mean, that's what I can say to you on that
Matt,
one.
I want to respond to that quickly because we had a guy in the chat room, Joseph, talking about, Rodgers didn't look good against Tampa Bay. Man, every team is going to go through these ups and downs. You know, Baltimore didn't look that great against Philadelphia. I thought their defense is unbelievable, yet Philly made a big comeback on them. There's moments in a 6-month period where teams are going to have down times. Those moments change for this Sunday. This is going to be a whooping.
So I'll respond to your response of my response. The last 3 weeks here, Josh Allen hasn't been very good. You look at the 16 they scored on Tennessee, the 17 they scored on the Bills, and the 18 they scored on the Jets, which means they're probably going to score 19 this weekend. But I mean, I need to see it from Josh Allen, and I need to see it from this offense. They're not getting much from the run game. And one of the reasons why you can't trust anybody in this Bills backfield, I found a stat. Josh Allen has checked the ball down on 7 of his 285 dropbacks. So he's not throwing to the running backs, when you've got John Brown hurt and you got Stephon Diggs, who's probably going to be covered by Stephon Gilmore, this is going to be a huge Cole Beasley game. Last year, Cole Beasley had 7 catches for 75 yards and 7 catches for 108 yards. The Patriots have struggled against slot guys, so I'm looking at Cole Beasley this weekend. By the way, do not try and figure out this Patriots backfield. Last week, I unfortunately took a prop for a free play involving James White. James White played 10 snaps, and I figured it was one of those games we're going to throw to him. He barely played. Don't even just run away from all those guys. Harris, Burkhead, James White, all those guys. Just don't even think about playing anybody right now on that Patriots offense.
So your pick is Cole Beasley over in receptions.
Correct. Yeah, I can't play this game. They both stink right now. I got to see it from the Bills before I can lay any sort of points with them right now.
The key to winning is to see it before it happens. Ralph, what do you like?
Well, I'm going to bring up a point Matt and I both brought up on my beloved Browns against the Steelers. When you have a history like you do, it's deer in the headlights. So let me point this out. The last 33 times Buffalo and New England have played. Prez, how many wins does Buffalo have?
1.
33 games. 3. So they're 3 and 30 the last 33 games.
I took a stab.
And including, I think, 7 or 8 straight losses. The last time they were favored against New England, I had hair. It was 2003. So
do you have any
you're asking a lot for a team. You talk about a team getting something off their shoulder. You have to look those guys in the eye, have Belichick across the field from you, and beat them before that onus is off your shoulders. So, do I think they can do it? Yeah, they're the much better team. Power rating wise, do I think they can do it? Yes. But scoring 16, 17, 18, at 19 is pretty good, Matt. I'll give you 3-1. They don't score 19 points this game.
I mean, yeah, that probably won't. It's going to be really hard to get to 19. That's for sure.
But you look at New England, 10, 12, and 6 points. I'm going to call me simple, stupid, and say, Yeah, the under's low, but the under is only low in our mind, perception-wise, because of this crazy COVID 2020 season where the average total's 49. You look back at 2 years ago, and you have a late October game, actually a November 1st game in Buffalo with Lake Erie, with these two
37 and a
defenses.
half.
Yeah, and these two offenses, I think there's value on the under.
I agree. Well, I agree 100%, Ralph. Like I was talking about with Indianapolis and Detroit, I'll be betting both Buffalo and the under. I think we're going to get 13 points out of New England maximum. So, Matt, maybe the team total on New England under is in play.
It is 20.5 on the first book I'm looking at. I could see that. That's not a bad play.
Yeah, dude, that's 3 touchdowns.
I don't like that. Buffalo has given up 23 points to everyone except the Jets twice. So their defense is not the shutdown defense that we're accustomed to. They have given up their points, again, except to the Jets. That's the only opponents they've held under 23 all year.
Boys, let's get to the next game, Cincinnati, Tennessee. And I'll tell you something. One of the things I love betting high-octane offenses, quarterbacks who can stretch the field when they're at home and the back door is wide freaking open. I look at this and I say, look, I love Tennessee. I think Tennessee's a really good team. I think that Tennessee's a top 6-7 team in the league. They almost pulled out a victory against Pittsburgh last week after a horrid start. Missed a field goal at the end to take it into overtime. This is a legit football team. With that said, plus 5.5 for Cincinnati, a total of 53.5. Man, if Tennessee's up by 10 and Burrows has the ball with 2 minutes to go, Cincy's going to cover. I like them. They're on my short list for one of my client releases. I'm all in on Cincinnati this week at plus 5.5, Matt.
I mean, I was so close to coming in and dancing and everything because the Bengals money line was about to come in on the Browns, but unfortunately it didn't. And we talked about it last week. The Bengals and teams like that have to learn how to win. I mean, they just, they went punch for punch, but in the end, they just didn't make the plays that mattered. I like them too. Again, I'm a glutton for punishment here. There's a couple things that concern me though. 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen either went down or are currently injured. And the one thing is the Titans, in terms of a pass rush, they've only got like 10 sacks this year. So they're not exactly getting to the quarterback. If Joe Burrow has time, he should be able to take people apart. A.J. Green, the last 2 weeks, has 15 receptions for 178 yards. I called him dead like a couple weeks ago, but his career and everything's getting resurrected. Except for Drew Lock, every quarterback to face the Titans has passed for multiple touchdowns. To me, this seems like an over here. The other thing is Jonnu Smith. We watched last week. I don't even know. Harrison Bryant, who was a stud at Florida Atlantic, did some big-time things for Cleveland. Every tight end in the nation has done stuff against the Bengals. So Jonnu Smith, heck, if they put out Anthony Firkser props, you might want to take the over there. By the way, Ryan Tannehill's 16 regular season starts with the Titans. The over is 13-2-1 so far in his career. So Jonnu Smith props and the over here is where I'm looking.
Yeah, and I see the over with you 100%. I mean, again, like what Ralph was talking about, worried a little bit about weather. But, look, nobody's going to keep Cincy down too much. They're going to get you points. And, Ryan Tannehill and that Tennessee offense, I mean, these guys can get into the 30s on any given Sunday. Ralph, what do you like?
You look at Cincy's numbers and you say, well, their offense is number 20 and, in yards per game. But you break it down and that 20 is, well, in his first game as a pro, he only had 295 against the Chargers. Then at Baltimore, he only had 205. You take those games out against the inferior defense, and those numbers jump up quite a bit. I'm with you. To think they were without Williams, Hopkins, and Hurst last week, and without Mixon, and they put up 34 points and 468 yards against the Browns. Back at home, Tennessee hasn't played a road game in 4 games. They were home against Buffalo, home against Houston, home against Pittsburgh. I do want to say this. Let's remember, Tennessee was playing their 3rd game in 13 days, and it showed early in Pittsburgh. Then they did make that nice comeback and, missed a field goal. 6th missed field goal, by the way, for their kicker. I don't know how much longer he'll be there. if the weather's fine, this is an over for me. Very well could be a play. I was on Cincinnati and Cleveland over last week. Likely to be on both Cleveland and Cincinnati and Vegas and Tennessee over, dependent on the weather.
He's Ralph Michaels, Matt Joseph with us. You're watching the NFL Presidential Address. We tape every week, 4 p.m. Eastern. We do this show live. Please join us. And for the guys that are joining us right now, thank you. Las Vegas, Cleveland. Cleveland -2.5, a total of 52.5. Man, we've seen some really good moments out of this Raiders team, and then we've just seen some really bad moments. Conversely, the exact same thing applies for Cleveland right now. Yeah, they played the second half without OBJ last week. They were able to make a nice comeback. Mayfield started off super slow, and then I think he hit 9 in a row, give or take. Matt, I like Cleveland here, man. I like the over, and I like Cleveland. Both are on my short list. Feel free to talk me out of either one of them or both.
I mean, you guys know what I think about Cleveland. They're a bet against team for me whenever I get the chance to. But the problem is also the Raiders are a bet against team. I don't believe in either of these two teams right now. So I'll tell you what I'm leaning to, and probably will be a play on Sunday, is under 26.5 points for the Raiders. I mean, Cleveland's defense is better than some of the numbers they're putting up. You got to see some of the injury status for some of their corners and guys like that. But this Raiders offense doesn't scare me. I mean, I have Josh Jacobs on my fantasy team. He's done nothing for the most part this year.
And we expected so much out of him this year.
And we did, and he's just, and now Devontae Booker's getting carries, and the Raiders disappoint me. So I'm looking at the under for their team total. The other thing I'm looking at here is Kareem Hunt. Nobody played a higher percentage of their offensive snaps than Kareem Hunt did last week for the Browns. I think that this is an under in terms of the Raiders points. I can't bet on either of these two teams because they're just stay away teams for me this year. So that's probably the only place I'm going to go is under for the Raiders team points, and probably looking at some Kareem Hunt props as well.
I get it, brother. Ralph, what do you like?
I have a question for you, Matt. I mean, the Browns had 3 healthy wide receivers last week when OBJ went down. And now who you turn to? You have the tight ends, and you have Landry. I mean, do you start looking at Landry props, or does Vegas make an adjustment when you lose a star wide receiver, even though he hadn't had the most targets? Landry had the most targets, but how quick does Vegas make the adjustments, or do they put it out, let it get bet up, and then make the adjustments the following week?
I think it won't be Landry that gets adjusted. It'll be Rashad Higgins, who's going to replace Odell Beckham. Because remember, Landry's in the slot, so they play 2 different positions. And Landry's not been that good this year. He's just been one of those slot guys that catches the passes and gets a lot of targets, but he hasn't done that much. So I think you're going to see the adjustment with Rashad Higgins more than you'll see with Jarvis Landry.
With that said, I again, this is another game I have to look at the over. You look at Las Vegas's numbers. Every game this year for Las Vegas has totaled 53 or more points. The Raiders defense has allowed 30-plus points in 5 of 6 games. You look at the Cleveland offense. Yes, they got held 7 against Pittsburgh. Yes, they got held 6 against Baltimore. Well, guess what? Pittsburgh's the number 1 defense in yards per game. Baltimore's number 3 defense in yards per play, and that's the reason you got shut down. This isn't the Raiders. Cleveland 8-0 over-under as a favorite. Cleveland averaging 37 points per game, taking out the Baltimore and Pittsburgh games. And again, I hate to mean a broken record, but I can't make any early bets on these games until I see that weather. I'm okay with wind going in Cleveland, east and west, so you're going against it or with it. But if the wind is coming north and south, Brown Stadium sits right against Lake Erie. I've been at too many games with north and south winds that no quarterback can throw. So over if the wind is good, no play if the wind is bad.
Awesome stuff, guys. 560 of you watching this show live, 71 likes. Please help us, guys. We don't ask for much. Just hit that thumbs up button, please. It really is needed. It's part of the the YouTube algorithm. It gets us up on the pages. We need your support. We need your help. Please hit that like button. I'm so restrained today, Ralph. New York Jets, Kansas City. Matt?
I mean, they're pushing me here. The team total's 13.5. I'm still taking the under.
You are?
I'm not. I mean, for the Jets,
You're going to take under 13
I'm taking the under.
and a half?
Probably. I mean, there might be some 14s out there, and usually a lot of the books don't put out the team totals until we get closer to kickoff. So the one book I'm looking at has 13.5. I don't love it, but what have we seen? The Jets have 2 touchdowns the last 3 weeks from their offense. I mean, I don't know, especially Jamison Crowder didn't practice again today. I was very disappointed. There were no Braxton Berrios props last week because he would have surpassed those props depending upon what they were. The other thing that I'll be interesting to see from the books is the Le'Veon Bell props, because I feel like it's going to be a Le'Veon Bell game. Last week, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 18 snaps. Le'Veon Bell had 17 snaps through the first 3 quarters, and then the game got away from him, and neither of those 2 guys played. So I see Andy Reid having a sense of humor, playing Le'Veon Bell quite a bit. I see them promising Le'Veon Bell that this was the game they were going to feature him. But I think the books know that too, and you guys know how smart the odds makers are. So I'll be very interested to see what the numbers are for Le'Veon, because if it gets too high, I'm taking the under because Edwards-Helaire is going to play. But if it's too low, I've got to capitalize because I think Le'Veon Bell's going to score and do some stuff offensively.
So hopefully we'll know that by Friday. So guys, watch Wager Talk today, Friday. Matt Joseph will be on to talk props. Ralph, man, I literally have nothing. Like, I mean, I understand at the top of the show you pointed out that the right bet is the New York Jets based on historical trends in this situation. I can't bet the Jets. I know you can't bet the Jets. I certainly can't bet Kansas City here. I mean, maybe we just go back to the Ralph Michaels well and take Kansas City under the total in the first quarter.
Yeah, it did go over last game though in that Denver game because they scored, they did score. But I have, normally I would be looking at these big dogs.
Yeah.
There's no freaking way in the world I'm betting the Jets.
Correct.
You're averaging 264 yards per game. You're averaging 14 first downs. If Andy Reid has any semblance of vengeance, he's going to Le'Veon Bell rush for 200 yards against the Jets. So, there's talk in the Jets. There's the New York gossip pages are saying Darnold's on the block.
Who the hell? What, are they going to trade him with the Saskatchewan Roughriders?
No, I think the Cowboys
looking for a quarterback. What?
I think Dallas would take him, but there's only one way for me to bet it, and is Kansas City. And am I going to bet KC? No, but you're looking at 19.5. If I did want to bet KC, I would actually look at the first half, which is probably going to be minus 11 or 11.5.
Only way.
Because they're gonna run the offense the way they normally do with Mahomes. They're not going to worry about what the score is. They may be up 35-0. Then the second half, you may make his adjustments. Let Chad Henne get a half. Rest Mahomes. I mean, they only have Carolina on deck, but so. If I'm not betting KC, but anyone that wants to bet KC, I would suggest looking at the first half line and laying the number with that instead of the full game.
I freaking love that bet. You know what? That is such a great thought because, when KC runs the regular offense, I mean, let's be honest here, they could score in 3 minutes. Can we expect them to put up 21 points in the first half? I think that is extremely realistic. Can we expect the Jets to put up 10? Hell no. Matt doesn't even think they're going to put up 14 over the whole game. I'm putting that on my short list, Ralph. That is a really, really good thought. Kansas City in the first half, guys. Check it out. Thanks to all of you guys for hitting that like button. 118 now. So greatly appreciated. Okay, New Orleans, Chicago. Love it.
Aren't we Rams, Miami?
Oh, yes. Rams. And I love that game, too. But I'm mostly excited about the New Orleans game. But, yeah, no, Rams, Miami. And we've got the Rams at minus 3.5, 46 on tap. Tua's going to start. I don't want to play this game because I want to see how Tua does. I think being a scrambling quarterback, I think it's going to take the league a little bit of time to figure him out. Like I think they're figuring Lamar Jackson out now in front of our very eyes, which we'll talk about a little later. With that said, I think the Rams are for real. Matt, I'll go to you first. I like the Rams here. I would take them all the way up to minus 6. I think this team is a really good team. I think their defense is unbelievable. And I'll tell you what, for all the people who want to insult Jared Goff, and there are many, the offensive play calling on the Rams is second maybe only to Kansas City. I am very high on the Rams. 3.5 for me. I'll take that to the bank all day long. What do you like, Matt?
I will go against you somewhat. I think I might be taking the Dolphins in the first quarter or the first half. And the reason why is there's no film on Tua. And this was, I mean, clearly this was the plan that Miami had all year long, was to basically go for however many, it was 6 weeks, let Ryan Fitzpatrick play, hope he doesn't get hurt, and then install the offense during this bye week and put in the Tua. It's going to be completely different because you've got two completely different quarterbacks, and you can only go back and watch so much Alabama tape. You've got a Rams team that's traveling once again to the East Coast. They've got a bye week coming up, which I know Ralph talked about. And then, of course, after that, they've got Seattle. I think there's a chance they're a little shell-shocked. Short week here against a quarterback that they don't have a lot of film on. I think I'm looking at Miami in the first quarter or the first half. And by the way, the Miami offensive line has only allowed 10 sacks so far this year. For as poor as we think that they are, they've only given up 10 sacks. Now, granted, look, the Rams defense is really good, and they should get pressure here. But I think I'm looking at a short-term play on the Dolphins, either first quarter or first half. They bring out look, they're going to script the first, 10, 15 plays. They're going to go over those 10 or 15 plays through practice. They're going to make sure they work. They're going to make sure everything goes with Tua. The Rams are going into this blind here, so I think the Dolphins punch them first. Heck, I might even consider a Miami to score first type prop because I think that they're going to go out there and work on that 15-play script and get it down pat. So I'm looking for a quick bet with regards to Miami, either first quarter or first half.
And I don't mind that at all, Matt, and especially considering I'm really high on the Miami defense. I think they're a very fast, strong defense. But I'll tell you something. If you don't want Tua to get sacked, don't let Aaron Donald know that their offensive line is really good because he don't care. This guy is an absolute beast. Jalen Ramsey on cover. The speed coming out of that linebacking core in the Rams is going to be able to shadow Tua. I'm really high on the Rams, regardless of what you say. But I do actually like your concept of Miami scoring first. Ralph, talk to me.
Boy, I can't agree with you more. You know, in my mind, Tua is going to scramble, and then Rams are going to make adjustments. And I'm not going to bet a rookie quarterback making his first road start when teams know he's playing. Let's remember, I mean, Burrow did it at Cincinnati. KC did not know Herbert was starting that game, because Tyrod Taylor got injured in pregame. So they had no idea it was coming. This Rams team knows it's coming. This Ram team knows Tua runs. This Ram team, has 4 number ones on the defensive line, then add in those defensive players. I am not betting the Rams now, but I will tell you this. I have this marked down and circled. If you are correct and Miami scores, I will be all over live betting the Rams right after that because their adjustments will come quick. Their defense is quick enough to contain them. And, this team that has 9.4% sack percentage on defense will get some hits on Tua. And it's a whole different ball game getting hit in the NFL than you do it, in college football.
Yeah, I put my hand up. Put me in there for in-game betting. And speaking of in-game betting, Ralph and Matt, Arizona was down by 10, 6-7 minutes to go in the game. Seattle had the ball. Arizona plus 450 in game. I bet it. That worked out well for me. In-game betting is just awesome. Okay. Permission to go to my favorite game to talk about. New Orleans and Chicago. So, here's my take. New Orleans is an overrated football team. Their offense doesn't feel to me like they're in full sync. Granted, Michael Thomas has been out.
And Sanders.
And Sanders, yes. But largely Michael Thomas because he stretches the field and he's really a blanket for Drew Brees. Chicago is a nightmare. Like, I understand that their defense is really good. I get it. They weren't able to do anything against the Rams' offense. They had moments. But the offensive play calling coming out of Chicago is so bad. It's so uncreative. It is so yesterday that if I was Nick Foles or Trubisky, I would be like, what do you want us to do, man? Like, they don't call screens. They don't call outs. They don't call wheel routes. They don't throw deep to stretch the field. They don't set up plays by bringing linebackers in and then running tight ends behind the linebackers. They're not bringing the defensive backs in by running quick outs. They're not so that they can set up longer throws later in the game. This offense is a freaking disaster. And although I think Foles sucks and I think Trubisky sucks, I think the play caller for the Chicago Bears sucks even more. I like New Orleans in this game. I like them a lot. I am sell. Chicago to me is like holding Blockbuster's stock prior to Netflix coming around or DirecTV on demand or whatever. Sell that stock, Matt.
Well, okay, so everybody knows I'm an Eagles fan, but I have to rant for a second like I'm a Bears fan. Matt Nagy should know what Nick Foles does well. Nick Foles, when he has his most success, it's when it's no huddle, when it's quick. I mean, they talked about it on the broadcast. They said he knows when a play comes in and he knows when he doesn't have enough time. So basically, he knows better than his own head coach what works and what doesn't work. If they ever give the reins to Nick Foles, because I'm tired of seeing this Nick Foles thing. He doesn't stink. He's in a terrible system. The coach should be in a should alter the system for him.
He was really good at Jacksonville. Sorry.
Well, no, okay, but you're also pointing out another terrible
so
franchise.
He was really
Jacksonville
good
was
at
a
Philadelphia.
Disaster. He was very good at Philadelphia.
Matt.
Chip Kelly knew what to do with him in that year.
He was the Trent Dilfer of this century.
Look, I'm going to die defending Nick Foles. I don't care. He's not
Please
a terrible
don't
quarterback.
Die on us. We need to make more money off of you first.
Okay, but I gotta do the paper for my own self here. So I just think Nick Foles is better than what this coaching staff has put him in. Here's a stat I found. David Montgomery is one of 7 backs in the league without a multiple gain of at least 15 yards so far of anybody who's had 50 carries or more. They don't run. What do you want Nick Foles to do when everybody knows you can't play action? You can't do anything.
Absurd.
The only thing they can do, his team is terrible. So to me, I'm looking at the Bears team total under, but I can't trust the Saints outdoors in a cold game. Also, if Teron Armstead, who protects Drew Brees' blindside's not playing, Khalil Mack could have like 3 or 4 sacks himself. So to me, this is an under game. This is a Bears team total under here. But I pray for Nick Foles that people aren't stupid enough to think he stinks. He doesn't stink. He's in a terrible offense. Fix the offense. They will succeed, and Nick Foles will win you ball games because he's a winner.
Okay, fine. Nick Foles doesn't stink. Nor does Trent Dilfer or Doug Williams or Jeff Hostetler. All 3 Super Bowl champions. Ralph Michaels. Clearly, Ralph, Matt, and I are anti-Chicago's offense. Where are you?
Well, how can you not? I mean, the only thing keeping the Chicago Bears offense from being a complete train wreck is the New York Jets offense. So, hey, they're better than someone, so you can't be the worst, right?
Dallas.
Dallas's defense is worse.
No, Dallas's offense currently. One of our listeners,
come on,
Dallas.
You're talking to James Madison. You're talking to James Madison, undrafted rookie quarterback. That's not fair. But anyway, everyone talks about the Saints. Oh, the Saints are this home team in the dome, and they go on the road and they go outside. Well, the road team's 12-3 ATS the last 15 Saints games, so they've gone okay going on the road. The funny thing is, I will say this. It does need to be pointed out that not is it going to be chilly and windy. This is the Saints' first outdoor game this year because their road games were in Oakland and Detroit. So that does concern me, having not played outdoors the entire season and now waiting to November in Chicago to play outdoors. I am going to pass on this game, but I want to do a 30-second training for our viewers, and not to belittle anyone, but a lot of times when you're looking at who you like in a game, you sort of broke it out, Prez. So, Matt talked about team totals. You talked about team totals. This total's 43.5 because of the weather. The Saints are a 4.5-point favorite. So there's a 39-point difference. So that's 19.5. So when you're handicapping, which do you feel more comfortable? Chicago getting to 19.5 or the Saints getting to 24. And that's another way just to look at the game when you're doing it. So you break down each team total. You look at which do you think is more realistic. I don't think the Bears can get to 19.5. The Saints defense, the Saints defense has held their opposed. They held Tampa to a season low. They held Detroit to a season low. They held Carolina to a season low. They held the Chargers to a season number 2 low. And they held Green Bay to a season number 2 low. So their defense is performing number 2 in the country, not as what they've given up, but number 2 defensively compared to what their opponents had against other teams. And that's the way I look at defenses. So to me, Bears getting to 19.5 is much more unrealistic than the Saints getting to 24, despite being their first outdoor game of the season.
Great point, Ralph. I like the team. I like the under in that game. Yes, Matthew?
I'd like to point out something also as well. When it comes to the team totals, the total for the game itself more often moves than the other things do. The team totals, for the most part, are actually stationary. So I'm looking at one book, and we talked about the total for the game. They have the Saints at 24.5 and the Bears at 20.5. So you're talking about a half a point or a point value. But sometimes if you like the under in a game, but the under moves out of your range, quite often there are times where the team total unders, and if you take both of them and you win one, then you get your value. I mean, so it's something to look at sometimes. If the total moves out of your range, then look at the team total unders because they do not move as much. So therefore, you could probably find your value there.
Excellent point, Matt. And the same thing with halftime totals and full game totals. Once they post them, they move independently. Just because a full game total moves, they don't adjust the halftime total unless they're taking money on it. So 2 different ways to look for value on the same thing.
Is there a better show out there than the NFL Presidential Address? Well, Marco, Kelly, and Gianni would say bet on it. That tape's today. Make sure to check it out. It is spectacular. So well done. Just a really informative show. Up on Wager Talk TV, our YouTube channel. 650 guys in the chat room right now. Man, just pleases me so much. I cannot tell you. Guys, only a few more games left to go, and as of now, I got Cincinnati over as our only consensus play. Am I missing anything?
That is correct, I think, so far.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Well, yep, that's correct.
San Fran and Seattle. Seattle -3. The total of 54 here. Interesting total. San Fran is going to likely play to the under, and Seattle could put up 50 points on any given Sunday. Look, I've been really high on Seattle all year. I'm a big fan of Russell Wilson and just a huge fan of what Pete Carroll has done this specific year with that offense, just sort of letting the lion out of the cage. Their defense is so bad, I have no words. With that said, I don't think San Fran is going to come into this game thinking we're going to win it by lighting up the scoreboard. I think they're going to run the ball. I think they're going to play 8-9 yard passes to Kittle in the slot spot. I think they're going to play slow. I think they're going to want to keep Russell Wilson off the field. I'm looking at the under in this game, and I actually like San Francisco. I think this team is a scary team. I know, Ralph, we've spoken about how hard their schedule is coming up, but at least they are in control of their own destiny. I like San Fran, and I like the under, Ralph.
Well, it's pretty easy for me, guys. If I have a team that is number 3 in the NFL in yards per game diff at +73 against a team that's 29. So I have the number 3 and a number 29, and I'm getting points, it's a no-brainer. I'm never betting on Seattle as a favorite with that defense. It's a sieve. You saw how tired they were. If I were San Francisco, I am normally a run team. I'll tell you what, if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I run 90 plays. I go no huddle the whole first quarter and just run down that field and watch Seattle wear down in the second half.
Great point. Matt, tell me you're on San Fran so we can put this puppy up as a consensus play.
No, I'm not. I mean, that's not. I'm not looking in that direction. Look, the 49ers are still so banged up. Kyle Shanahan said today that they don't know if they're going to play Jordan Reed or Tevin Coleman on offense. There's some guys on defense who are banged up. After last week, the type of game they played, but look, I can't take either of these two teams right now. The 49ers are ridiculously injured, and the Seahawks, you can't take them as a favorite with that defense that may not have Jamal Adams, and Shaq Griffin, one of their cornerbacks, could be out for that game too. The guy that I want to look at when it comes to props, Brandon Ayuk, who's averaging 6.6 targets, even with Deebo Samuel in the lineup. He's coming off a career-high 115 yards against the Patriots. I think Brandon Ayuk scores. I think he could score twice. The question for Seattle is who's going to be the running back. Chris Carson's got a midfoot sprain. Carlos Hyde has hamstring tightness. Travis Homer has knee bruise. That would mean that they'd potentially be down to their fourth-string running back, DJ Dallas, who I believe is from Miami. And you've got the Seahawks defense that you just can't.
This, man? Like,
you've got to know these sort of things. This is fantasy football coming in because DJ Dallas is getting picked up in a lot of fantasy leagues so far.
Have you even heard of this guy? I mean, great name, DJ Dallas. Are you kidding? I freaking love the guy's name, but who the hell is?
I have not. I know most starters in college football, but that's a name I don't know.
Matt, you're like different level, brother. Okay, so where are you gonna bet? What are you gonna bet in it?
I can't bet any side or toe. I would consider the Seahawks money line, but I don't love it. But I'm looking at Brandon Ayuk. I think he has a massive game against Seattle on Sunday.
There you go. Matt Joseph or Ralph Michaels, you're watching the NFL Presidential Address. 6 thumbs down. I understand that our competitors come in and listen to the shows because why wouldn't you? I mean, you're listening to Ralph and Matt. You want to take notes. I get it. But even our competitors, there's no reason for the thumbs down. We're all grown adults. We love you. Okay, boys, Dallas, Philadelphia. Can't bet the Eagles minus 7.5. They don't deserve to be bet at that number. But there's a 3.5 on the board, too, at bookmakers, so I'm totally lost. Can't bet them at 3.5 either. Certainly can't bet them can't bet Dallas. Can't bet the over. So we're going to the under. But I can't bet that either because Dallas's defense is so bad. I got zilch on this game, Matt.
Well, as a guy who watched Ben DiNucci's college career at James Madison, because they play in the CAA and that's near Richmond, Virginia, I'm impressed with the kid, but they're throwing him into a very tough situation. You've got a small amount of fans at this game, so there should be a little bit of an atmosphere. But the question is, has Dallas checked out? I mean, are they done? Like, we've seen them in games be done. Like, they were tired by the end of the Washington game and they checked out. But are they done for the season, or is it just a game-to-game thing? The Eagles, for as talent deficient as they are, they're going to fight you for all 60 minutes. And there's a chance that Jalen Reagor is going to come back. There's a chance that Dallas Goedert's coming back. Lane Johnson could play in this game. They're getting healthier at this time. But, yeah, can you trust the Eagles here? That at a 7.5, I can't trust the Eagles. So potentially I tease them down because I think they're going to win the game. Dallas with all those offensive weapons, if somehow DiNucci gets time in the pocket and if somehow they find some holes for Ezekiel Elliott, they could put up some points here. The question is, who's in that offensive line and how much time is DiNucci? And what's the playbook going to be for Dallas? So I don't know. So to me, the best thing that I could do here is if I do a teaser, I'm going to throw the Eagles in there and essentially ask them to win by 2.
Yeah, and Matt, you and I texted throughout that Philadelphia game. I mean, I'll tell you something. Carson Wentz, a hot woman with a bad body. The guy has got all the skills in the world and no ability to think. He just made some absolutely bonehead plays. Ralph, what do you like in this game?
Nothing. I have no interest in the game. You would think I would want to fade Dallas with that defense and with a rookie quarterback. And let's remember, it's much different than a rookie quarterback. When you are Tua, when you are Burrow, when you are Herbert, you come into training camp and you're getting half the snaps. Dak Prescott was taking 80% of the snaps. Dalton was probably taking 19% of the snaps. So this guy was just a fly on a wall, probably taking 1% of snaps as an undrafted free agent who was just signed this year. Now, I mean, he did start at Pittsburgh. He was the Panthers starter for half a year. He played there as a freshman and a sophomore before he transferred. So he did play some big-time ACC football. But, again, put in this spot, not having practices all August, just being that guy throwing the ball, the third guy on, would say I want to back Philly, but we don't even know where the line is right now. There's only a handful of lines. Some are 3.5, some are 7.5. When they announced that Andy Dalton is out, I will say this. Right now, if you want Philadelphia, you freaking go bet that 3.5. Because when Andy Dalton is out, I can see this line going to 9, by the weekend when people are in Philly realizing the injuries they have and knowing that they had to just sign a quarterback to be DiNucci's backup because Dalton can't go because he's not out of. As of this morning, he's still in concussion protocol. So that gives them, 1 day of practice to work on Philly's defense. So I think they're in trouble either way. So, to me, it's this. If I think Philly wins with you, Matt, are they teasable? Yes. Or it's another live game situation. Yeah. If Dallas returns the kickoff or DiNucci scrambles and leads them to an early touchdown, I'd be live betting Philly. So that's a situation I'll be looking at. But I will not be backing Dallas by any means.
Ralph, you made me laugh. I thought to myself, if I was Andy Dalton after this career that I've had, and someone says to me, in 20 years' time, Andy, what are you most proud of in your NFL career? I think he should say, hey, I moved the line 6 points. When I was in, it was 3. When I was out, it was 9. How good am I?
And, now Ezekiel Elliott, I'm sure has fumbling issues on his head. He never fumbled at Ohio State. I think he fumbled twice in 4 years. And now he's fumbled 6 times in 4 games. It's crazy how a running back gets the yips like that. And all of a sudden, now it's so much in your head that it affects the way you're playing.
Let's get moving. Chargers, Denver, -3 for the Chargers. Hebert is just playing spectacular. Whereas Denver's quarterback is playing the opposite of spectacular. I like the Chargers here. Matt, talk me off of them.
Well, if you watch the last game with the Broncos, a lot of the talk after the game was how frustrated the defense was, how they played about as well as they could against the Chiefs, and the offense didn't do anything. And Drew Lock is, Drew Lock. He probably isn't the answer there. It's still early to decide that, but there's not much in the way of weapons. And, of course, there was the snow aspect and the cold aspect, and so that was part of it. And then you have Noah Fant after the game saying basically put up or shut up. He's going to get frustrated because, by the way, their tight end, the other tight end, Alberto, I don't even want to pronounce his last name. It's Oguanemu or something like that. He and Drew Lock played together at Missouri, and they've got an instant chemistry, and he's eating into Noah Fant's target. So to me, Noah Fant's also just frustrated because he's not the number 1 tight end anymore in Denver. When you look at the Chargers, they've got 3 offensive linemen who are all banged up, Brian Bulaga, Trey Turner, and then their center as well, all question marks, and Herbert was sacked a bunch. So that's a factor too. To me, this seems like an under. By the way, the Broncos have allowed the 5th most rushing yards to quarterbacks, and we know Herbert's got some mobility, so that might be worth a look at the over for Herbert's rushing yards in this game. But to me, I lean more to the under here. I don't know if I can get – the Chargers just lose games they're supposed to, and when they're another team, when it's close – they just, for some reason, against better teams or against other teams, they just lose a lot of games. Anthony Lynn is not a coach that promotes a winning atmosphere, it feels like there. So I can't do it on the road. I'm probably going to look at the under here.
Ralph?
All right, Prez, what place is Cincinnati in the AFC North?
Last.
What place is Jacksonville in the AFC South?
Last.
Those are the Chargers' 2 wins. What place is Tennessee in?
Okay, Ralph. It's 5-10.
Pittsburgh.
You want me to show? There's my piece of paper.
Well, I'll finish my point. Chargers wins against Cincinnati and Jacksonville combined 2-11. Denver's losses. First place Tennessee, undefeated Pittsburgh, maybe the best team in the NFC, Tampa Bay, the best team in the AFC or second best, Kansas City. You have the biggest strength of schedule differences here that you can't even believe. Every team in the NFL, okay, let's say 75% of the NFL teams are going to lose to Tennessee, Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, and Kansas City. I'm all over Denver. They're 9-1-1 as a home dog against a losing team. You look at what they did against Kansas City. You said Drew Lock did nothing. Drew Lock had 411 yards against Kansas City. They outgained the Chiefs by 125 yards. They held the Chiefs to 0-8 in third down. The Chiefs scored 3 non-defensive touchdowns. That's the reason the score looks like he did. They went to the Jets, they beat them. They went to New England, beat them. Denver's probably making my card.
You know what? The LA Chargers are not making mine anymore. Great points, Ralph. Totally accept what you're saying. Pittsburgh, Baltimore. Oh my God.
Prez, you take it away. You start this one, buddy, because I know how much you love it.
Yeah, well, dude, I mean, I'm telling everybody right now, flat out, if you buy the Prez All Access Sunday card, which you should do, you will find Pittsburgh smack dab in there. Not only do I like Pittsburgh to cover, I like Pittsburgh to win. I think Pittsburgh's defense is outstanding. I think their offense is in full swing. Big Ben looks incredible. Their running game, their passing game, every part of Pittsburgh looks good to me. I think Baltimore is a totally overrated football team. I think the league is catching up to what will inevitably be one-year Lamar Jackson. I don't think Baltimore is that great. I don't think you could name 3 wide receivers on their team. I don't know if you could name, 2 tight ends. I don't know if you could name 6 guys on defense. I am not interested in Baltimore. I understand that they've beaten every team in the league except Kansas City. I get it. I think Lamar Jackson is like 22-1 or something straight up. I understand all of that. Baltimore is not going to win this football game. I will bet them the Pittsburgh Steelers on both the money line, and I will take the points. And I do like over the total as well, but not enough to bet it when I feel like Pittsburgh is one of the best bets on the board. I know you're going to disagree with me, Matt, which is fine, dude.
I mean, listen, the Ravens were my Super Bowl champions before the season, and they got Yannick Ngakoue. They got a bye week to integrate Yannick Ngakoue to help that defense like they even need the help. I mean, to me, the one thing I was reading some of the articles when it came to the Pittsburgh defense, and a lot of the talk for this week was Devin Bush was huge against Lamar Jackson. And you've got a guy who's played him before and a guy who's been able to track him down defensively. And now you've got Robert Spillane taking over for him. And it's a guy who hasn't played a ton of games, hasn't had a ton of experience against mobile quarterbacks. And you're going from this big-time advantage to, I think, a disadvantage here. And look, there's a lot to like about the Steelers' offense. There's a lot to like about the Steelers' defense. I think the Devin Bush loss is going to be felt here. You've got a bye week, and I think Baltimore's going to not reinvent themselves, but I think they're going to add some stuff to the playbook, and I think they're going to take some stuff out. Harbaugh's going to have 2 weeks to look at Pittsburgh, a Pittsburgh team that was pointing to this game and is putting a lot into this game. The one thing is both of these teams get a lot of sacks, but if you look, Ravens have had 13 sacks their last 2 games against the Bengals and the Eagles. Well, everybody's sacking both of those teams, so they're kind of hollow numbers here. I have more faith in the Ravens right now. I think in a bigger game, I would take Harbaugh over Tomlin. I'd take Justin Tucker over everybody else. And in a close game, because 7 of the last 10 games in this series have been decided by 7 points or fewer, I'm going to take the better special teams. I'm going to take the better coach, so I lean to the Ravens here.
I thought all these games are decided by 7. Why wouldn't you take the dog?
Because I'm taking the Ravens money line for the most part. I'm going to take the Ravens. I'm going to wait and buy the half and make it 3. I just think the Ravens are going to win this game.
If Matt Joseph buys the half to make it 3, then Matt Joseph doesn't understand mathematics. Ralph Michaels, or who do you like in this game?
Well, if you guys downloaded the NFL stat sheet, you should. It's free. It's on my page. I have sack percentages up there, and I really believe in sack percentages because if you look and you say, well, Baltimore's only been sacked 15 times. There's a lot of teams worse. But Baltimore is actually number 27 because they've been sacked 9.1% of the time they pass the ball. If you run the ball and you've been sacked 15 times, that's like saying you've been sacked 22 times in a normal pass offense. So I look at percentages. Guess what? Pittsburgh sack percentage on defense, number 1 in the NFL. Baltimore sack percentage on offense, number 27. That's a matchup I love. When you look at Baltimore and you say, oh, their D doesn't need help. In their last 4 games, yes, they allowed 517 to Kansas City. That was Kansas City's season high. They allowed 343 to Washington. You think that's not bad? That is the second best Washington performance this year. And then they allowed 364 to Philadelphia. That was Philly's second best performance.
Smoke on
so
that,
the numbers
Matt.
don't look bad, but when you're looking compared to the average, they're very high numbers. I don't like agreeing with Prez. But I have to lean the Steelers.
Not
here.
only do I believe that Matt leans towards Pittsburgh as well, he's just slightly confused. I'm going to put them up as a consensus play because he'll come around.
No, maybe we could talk Matt into Kansas City in the first half against the Jets minus the 11.
No, see, here's the thing. I think Baltimore just didn't take wide. Baltimore was coming off the Kansas City game, and then they were going right before the. I just don't think Baltimore took them seriously. You don't think 2 weeks worth for this rivalry at home, Baltimore's going to give one of their better defensive efforts?
Let me know when Matt stops talking.
Oh, stop! Go Ravens.
Last game, Prez.
Okay, brother. Tampa Bay, New York Giants minus 10.5, total of 46. I like Tampa Bay here. I think the New York Giants will really struggle to score. I don't know if I'm going to get to the window on this play, but I do prefer my 1969 Playboy over this game. Matt?
I actually lean to the Giants here. I do. I think that this is a game for Tampa Bay. They're not going to have Chris Godwin, so that means Scotty Miller is going to be more involved. And you've got next week, and a short week, you've got the Saints coming to Tampa Bay. There's bigger fish to fry for this team. After that, they've got another divisional game, and then they've got the Rams and the Chiefs. Here's this lowly game in New York against the Giants, and I don't think we get the full effort here. I think Daniel Jones can potentially open up that back door. I know that there's not a ton of weapons on the Giants. I know there's not a ton of reasons to bet them, but it just feels like this is one of those games the Bucs just don't take very seriously. We don't maybe get a great defensive effort. I think that this is probably an under, and I think the Giants plus the 10.5 are worth a look at home.
Ralph is losing his shit.
Well, because my number one stat is Tampa Bay's played 7 games. They've held 6 of those foes to a season low on offense. 6, including 5 straight. They've held the Chargers. Again, you might say these aren't great offenses, but if you hold them to a season low, that means you've done better than every other team in football. They've held Denver, the Chargers, Chicago, Green Bay, and Oakland all to a season low. If they hold the Giants to a season low, the Giants had 231 yards. That means they're going to hold the Giants to 220 yards. I think this is an under game. I have no problems with you saying, Matt, it's a look ahead to New Orleans next week. And they're on the road for a third time in 4 weeks, and they're going from Oakland all the way to the Giants. I will say this. Remember, Brady played here every year against the Jets, so it's not like he's unfamiliar with the stadium. It's not like Brady hasn't had great success in the stadium. I lean Tampa Bay, and I lean under.
Awesome stuff, guys. Listen, let's skip the teaser section. Survivor, I'm still in the circa. A little bit confused this week on what to go. I might just end up taking Kansas City and calling it a day. As far as consensus plays, Cincinnati over. I put Matt down as agreeing on Kansas City first half.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
so I'm going to just, okay. And Matt, you made
Hey, you know what? We had two, Prez. Let's not force a third. We tell people not to bet games if they don't want to bet it. Let's not force a third consensus.
Those are the two. Guys, I love you all. Every one of you who logged on, the thumbs up, the thumbs down, all the chat that is going on in the room, people with the coolest names like Mappy McMap. I am just tickled pink that you take time out of your day to join us. We will see you all every single Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. A big shout out to Ralph Michaels and Matt Joseph for being forced to join me on the show. I learn from you guys every time you speak. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you on Wager Talk today tomorrow at 12.